Good afternoon. I think it's officially afternoon now. So hello, my name is Michelle Ringette, and I'm assistant to the AFT president for Labor, Government Relations, and Political Affairs. And it's my pleasure today to moderate this policy conversation that's sponsored by the Albert Shanker Institute and the American Federation of Teachers on ESEA at 50, the federal government and equity in American education. So I'm going to begin today with a few housekeeping items. So as you know, today's panel is part of a series of monthly policy conversations. And the topic of next month's conversation will be, is there a pension crisis? And the panelists will be Chad Alderman, who's an associate partner at Bellwether Education Partners, Teresa Gildarducci, professor of economic policy analysis at the New School for Social Research, David K. Johnson, professor of business law at Syracuse University College of Law, and also a former New York Times Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter, and our own Dan Pedrati, who's a manager at the Research and Strategic Initiatives Department here at AFT. And it will be on Wednesday, get your calendars, Wednesday, March 11th in this room at the same time. So we are going to be taking questions today after our panelists have concluded their initial presentations. So for those of you in the room, there will be index cards being handed out. Oh, and we have one right now. But make sure that you have an index card so you can take questions down as you're listening, and you can hand them up at the end. And then we'll get through as many as we possibly can. We're actually going to conclude the program at 1:30. And I also want to encourage you to help this be a conversation that goes wider than this room. There will be a Twitter hashtag we use. It will be ESEA Equity. That's ESEA EQUITY. I know you can all spell. I'm just being very diligent. And since this is the topic of the moment, and both the Senate and the House are in recess, but they've begun the process of reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, or ESEA. There's so much discussion on what the new legislation should include, and it's critical that we all weigh in and continue to make our voices heard on this so that there is not a vacuum that gets filled by others who would not advance the things that we know are most critical to be included in the legislation as we move forward. So, 50 years ago, the ESEA was first enacted into law as part of the war against poverty, and bringing the federal government into American education as a force for equity and educational opportunity. Today, 13 years after its transformation into No Child Left Behind, NCLB, the debates over the reauthorization of ESEA have posed questions that go to the heart of the federal government's role as a force for educational equity. Will Title I's funds be diverted from high-poverty students in public schools? Will those funds end up in vouchers or other privatization schemes that undermine the public schools serving the students with the greatest needs? Will the failed NCLB accountability regime be replaced with an approach that supports and improves public schools serving students with the greatest needs? Our panel will discuss these questions and more. So we have 3 speakers today. I know it looks like 2, but we have a third one coming. And each has distinguished him or herself as an advocate for equity in American education and as a warrior on behalf of American children that live in poverty, of students of color, and as English language learners. They each bring a wealth of experience and a lifetime of commitment to today's topic, and it is my honor to be able to introduce them to you and to let you hear from them directly. So in your packets, you'll get a full biography. I couldn't possibly capture the lifetime of their experience and work, but I'll try to give you a brief taste of it. First, Judith Brown-Dianis. Can I call you Judith? Mm-hmm, sure. Okay. She's the co-director of the Advancement Project, a civil rights organization that is prominent in the struggles to preserve voting rights, to secure policing and school discipline policies which respect the rights of people of color, and to stop the mass closure of public schools serving poor communities of color, among other issues. Judith is a graduate of the Columbia University School of Law and a civil rights lawyer by profession. She headed up the Washington, D.C. office of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund before she came to the Advancement Project. And I didn't want to miss this, that Essence magazine once called her one of 30 women to watch.
Hey,
Okay. And then to Judith's left, we have Wade Henderson. May I call you Wade?
please.
Okay. Wade is president and CEO of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights and the Leadership Conference, a national coalition of civil rights organizations that includes the Advancement Project and the American Federation of Teachers among its members. A civil rights lawyer by profession, Wade directed the Washington, D.C. office of the NAACP and the American Civil Liberties Union prior to assuming his current position with the Leadership Conference. He's a graduate of Rutgers University School of Law and a professor of law at the School of Law at the University of the District of Columbia. So, and then finally, she will be joining us. Her plane has landed and she's en route. Is Randy Weingarten, who's the president of the American Federation of Teachers, a 1.6 million member union of professionals in the field of education, healthcare, and state and local government, and president of the Albert Shanker Institute, a think tank affiliated with the AFT. She's a graduate of the Benjamin Cardozo School of Law, and prior to coming to her current position here, Randy served as president of the largest union local in the United States, which is New York City's United Federation of Teachers. For 6 years, she taught social studies in an inner city high school in Crown Heights section of New York, and last year, she was awarded the Hubert H. Humphrey Civil and Human Rights Award for her lifelong commitment to improving America's education system. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our panelists. And first, I am going to, well, here's Randy. So we're going to welcome Randy. We have our 3 panelists. And I'd like to first turn it over to Judith to talk a little bit about the reauthorization of ESEA. And maybe let's start with sort of your hopes and aspirations and what you really think this moment speaks to and what we can really think about when we're thinking about ESEA at 50.